Yo, what's up everybody? Now look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this being Muslim in today's world. It's complicated, man. Islamophobia on the rise in the West, wars in the Middle East and Asia, even religious discrimination in Africa. We're diving deep into the countries where being Muslim can actually be straight up dangerous. Some might surprise you. We're talking real stories, real evidence, and we're not shying away from the tough questions. So buckle up, because we're about to get real uncomfortable. All right, let's start with China, specifically the Xinjiang region. Picture this, you're a Uyghur Muslim just trying to live your life, right? But the government, they're watching your every move. Imagine being ripped away from your family, thrown into a camp, all because of your religion. That's the reality for over 1 million Uyghurs right now, locked up in these so-called re-education camps. In 2017, according to official statistics, arrests in Xinjiang accounted for nearly 21% of all arrests in China, despite people in Xinjiang making up only 1.5% of the total population. Since 2017, Chinese authorities have used various pretexts to damage or destroy 2/3 of Xinjiang's mosques. About half of those have been demolished outright. Maisumujang Maimue, a Chinese religious affairs official, August 10th, 2017, on a Xinhua Weibo page. And I quote, "Break their lineage, break their roots, break their connections and break their origins. Completely shovel up the roots of two-faced people, dig them out and vow to fight these two-faced people until the end." This, I fear, is much deeper than just religious discrimination. No, this here is a classic case of cultural genocide. Human Rights Watch, they've been all over this, but overwhelmed. Forced labor, torture, brainwashing, this is happening right now in the 21st century. But this issue has gone under the radar again, making you question, are people just overwhelmed or desensitized? Next up, it's Myanmar. If you haven't heard about the Rohingya Muslims, listen up. Imagine being denied citizenship in your own country, your homes burned, your families murdered, all while the world seemingly watches on, or just ignorant of it. The UN called it a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, and yet this seems to not get anywhere near the media attention it deserves. These type of atrocities makes me question geopolitics. It seems that human life is second to national interest. Over 700,000 Rohingya were forced to flee to Bangladesh, living in cramped, desperate conditions. The violence has led to one of the largest refugee crises in recent history. Fleeing to neighboring Bangladesh, the living conditions in refugee camps are dire, lacking adequate food, shelter, and medical care. This is what happens when hate and intolerance are allowed to fester, especially since the military crackdown began in August 2017, which the UN described as ethnic cleansing. Reports indicate that thousands have been killed, and many women have been subjected to sexual violence. Even after the initial crisis, military operations against Rohingya communities continue, with reports of killings, arbitrary arrests, and forced labor. This environment of fear perpetuates the cycle of violence and oppression. Now let's talk about India, the world's largest democracy. Under the current government, Hindu nationalism has been on the rise, and with it, a disturbing trend of discrimination against Muslims. We're talking mob violence, lynchings, all fueled by rumors and misinformation spread online. A 2020 report by the Pew Research Center highlighted increasing violence against Muslims, including lynching incidents. The report documented a rise in lynching incidents targeting Muslims, often justified by accusations of cow slaughter or other cultural violations. The report also highlighted how certain government actions and policies contributed to an environment of fear and discrimination against Muslims. Muslims reported feeling increasingly unsafe and marginalized, with many experiencing social ostracization and economic challenges. It's like India is being torn apart from the inside and Muslims are caught in the crossfire. The country that Gandhi fought for, built on tolerance and unity, is fading away, replaced by fear and division. India is the example, a nation that had forgotten its own history. Afghanistan. After the US withdrawal and the Taliban takeover in 2021, things have gone from bad to worse, especially for religious minorities. Imagine living under a regime that dictates every aspect of your life, from what you wear to how you pray. The US Commission on International Religious Freedom detailed widespread persecution, particularly targeting Hazara Shias, Sikhs and Hindus. We're talking forced conversions, restrictions on education and employment, even targeted killings. It's a humanitarian crisis unfolding right before our eyes. Even other Muslim countries are concerned with the Taliban's interpretation of Islam and enforcement of the Sharia law, urging religious scholars in the Muslim world to challenge and condemn Taliban's policies, sparking an ideological conflict rather than just a religious one. Let's shift gears to Egypt. Under the current regime, things have taken a dark turn. Amnesty International released a damning report on Egypt's crackdown on peaceful protesters, journalists and activists, many of them Muslims. Arbitrary arrests, torture, enforced disappearances. It's a playbook straight out of a dictator's handbook. The government is using the threat of extremism to justify silencing any form of opposition. The government defines the word paranoia. The Egyptian authorities often label moderate Muslims as potential threats, viewing them as dissenters against the state's narrative. This targeting stems from a broader strategy to suppress any form of opposition that could challenge the government's authority, including those advocating for reform within Islam. The regime equates moderate Islamic movements with extremism, perceiving them as risks to national stability, thereby justifying their repressive measures against these groups. The report emphasizes the chilling effect of such actions on civil society and the broader implications for human rights in Egypt and for historical context. Since the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in the early 20th century, the Egyptian government has been wary of organized political movements that derive their legitimacy from Islamic principles. The Brotherhood gained significant political power after the 2011 revolution, which led to the ousting of President Hosni Mubarak. The subsequent election of President Mohamed Morsi, a member of the Brotherhood, alarmed the military and secular elites, prompting a coup in 2013 and a crackdown on the Brotherhood and similar groups. The Egyptian government, particularly under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, prioritizes stability and control over political pluralism. Moderate Muslim groups often advocate for reforms and greater political representation, which the government perceives as potential challenges to its authority. By framing moderate Islamists as extremists, the government seeks to justify its repressive measures and consolidate power. This is particularly bizarre as majority of the country are Muslims, estimated to 95%, all living in a state of pure paranoia. The kind paranoia only methamphetamine can outweigh. Pakistan, a country born out of the partition of India, founded on the very idea of being a homeland for Muslims. But somewhere along the way, things went sideways. Extremism took root and blasphemy laws became weapons used to target minorities, especially Ahmadis and Christians. People are literally being killed over accusations of blasphemy, often without any evidence. It's a toxic mix of religious extremism and government inaction that's created a climate of fear and impunity. Numerous militant organizations operate in Pakistan, often targeting specific sects. For example, groups like Lashkar-e-Jhangvi have conducted violent attacks against Shia communities, leading to fear and retaliation. This violence not only causes loss of life, but also deepens sectarian divides, making reconciliation difficult. In some cases, the state has been accused of turning a blind eye to sectarian violence, or even indirectly supporting certain groups for political gains. This lack of accountability fosters an environment where violence can thrive without repercussions. But in all honesty, it appears that the government is just simply incapable, as political stability appears to be no more than a myth, and government reach is rather quite insignificant. Yemen, the forgotten war, a country ravaged by conflict where hunger is a weapon and millions are on the brink of starvation or already starved to death. UNICEF reports millions of children suffering from malnutrition, lacking access to basic health care and education. It's a perfect storm of war, famine and disease, and the world seems content to sit back and watch as Yemen bleeds. I want to go deeper into this mess, but honestly I can't. Because it's just sad, just really, really sad after all the images of kids, literal, dying. I will break my promise of not shying away from the tough questions only this time. Syria, once a beacon of culture and history, now a cautionary tale of what happens when a country is torn apart by civil war. The conflict has pitted different factions against each other, with Muslims, both Sunni and Shia, caught in the crossfire. Millions have been displaced, seeking refuge in neighboring countries and beyond, their lives shattered by the violence. It's a tragedy of immense proportions, a stark reminder of the human cost of war and the devastating consequences of intolerance. According to the World Politics Review, the conflict could still escalate, with Turkish, Syrian and Russian forces all now deployed in the region, alongside proxies and Syrian Kurdish militias. Now, the Israel-Hamas war has added another potential flashpoint, with Iran-backed militias in Syria having already targeted US forces still operating there. Yes, Syria is a tragedy of immense proportions, but also a tragedy on the cusp of a resurgence. Finally, we come to the Central African Republic, a country often overlooked on the global stage, but for Muslims here, the struggle is real. Caught in a cycle of violence between armed groups, they face discrimination, displacement, and targeted attacks. Forced out of their homes, their businesses destroyed, many have been forced to live in overcrowded camps, where access to food, water, and healthcare is scarce. It's a stark reminder that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So there you have it, 9 countries, 9 different realities, but one common thread: the persecution of Muslims. From legal restrictions to outright violence, the challenges they face are as diverse as the countries themselves. We need to raise awareness, challenge hate speech, and hold those in power accountable. I repeat, hold those in power accountable. We are human, divided by passports, melanin, and dress codes, but still human after all. No wonder Muslims say that Islam is a religion of peace, because in a world of adversity, we can only seek peace. Thanks for watching, folks. Share this video, educate yourselves, and let's work together to create a world where everyone, regardless of their religion, can live in peace and dignity. Stay in tune for the next one.